I never thought the loudest silence of my life would come right after the final whistle in a stadium packed with 42,000 screaming fans. The score was tied 2-2, extra time ticking down, when my grandson scored the winner in the 119th minute. The roar that hit the roof of our little MLS stadium felt like it could lift the roof off. Confetti cannons exploded. Players dropped to their knees. I stood on the sideline in the charcoal suit I'd had tailored in Milan, the same one I wore the day I signed my last professional contract 15 years ago. The headset mic was still clipped to my lapel because the league had asked me to say a few words after the match. I was supposed to thank the fans, thank the academy kids who'd come up through the system, thank the family that stood behind me. Instead, my daughter-in-law, Brooke, walked straight onto the pitch in her sky-high heels, snatched the microphone from the announcer like she owned the damn thing, and looked dead into the main camera. "Tonight marks a new chapter for this club and this academy," she said, voice smooth as glass and twice as sharp. "After 7 long years of traditional guidance, we're proud to announce fresh leadership. Sentimental relics have no place in modern soccer. Effective immediately, the academy is rebranded under new, visionary direction. We thank our former benefactor for his service, but it's time to move forward." The crowd cheered. They actually cheered. Some of them even chanted my grandson's name while Brooke smiled like she'd just won the World Cup herself. My son, Tyler, stood 10 feet away in his coaching jacket, eyes fixed on the turf, refusing to look at me. Our 2 grandkids waved from the VIP box I'd paid to build with my own retirement checks. $18.7 million. That was the number that flashed through my head while the confetti settled on my shoulders. 18,700,000 of my own money, wired month after month, year after year, straight from the accounts my late wife Sarah and I had built together. And now I was a sentimental relic on national television. I didn't shout. I didn't curse. I simply smiled, slow and cold, straight into that camera lens. Because every single wire transfer had been documented, every canceled check, every offshore LLC they thought I'd never trace. And right then, with 42,000 people still roaring, I made a promise to myself that the next time Brooke grabbed a microphone, it would be to answer questions in federal court. That was the moment the war began. I drove home alone that night. The same black Range Rover I'd bought when the academy first opened its doors 7 years earlier. Back then, Tyler had called me every week, voice cracking with gratitude. "Dad, I don't know how we'd keep the lights on without you." Brooke used to hug me at every board meeting, whispering, "You're the reason these kids have a future." Funny how memory works when the money stops flowing. I sat in my study at 2 a.m., the city lights of Austin flickering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. On the desk in front of me were 3 thick folders. The first held every bank statement from the last 7 years. The second contained every email where Tyler begged for another bridge loan, or Brooke needed just one more marketing budget increase. The third was a simple ledger I'd kept in my own handwriting because I never fully trusted the academy's accountants after I caught them inflating travel expenses in year 2. Total wired, $18,742,319.47. I stared at that final number until it blurred. Not a single dime had come from club revenue. Every cent had come from the endorsement money I'd saved, the pension from my playing days in Europe, the quiet investment Sarah and I had made before the cancer took her. I had told myself I was building a legacy for my son and my grandkids. Instead, I had financed a lifestyle. Private schools, luxury vacations disguised as scouting trips, a second home in the hill country that somehow ended up in Brooke's name alone. At 3:17 a.m., my phone lit up. Tyler. I let it ring until voicemail picked up. Then Brooke. Then Tyler again. I turned the phone face down and poured myself 2 fingers of the bourbon Sarah used to keep in the cabinet for special occasions. This felt special enough. The next morning, I did 3 things before breakfast. First, I called my personal attorney, Marcus Hale, the same man who had handled Sarah's estate. "Marcus, I need you to freeze every account that still has my name on it. And I want a full forensic audit of the Academy's books going back to day one. Second, I walked into my bank and canceled every standing transfer that had been feeding the Academy's operational account. The manager, a woman who had known me since I opened my first account after retiring from the pitch, looked at me over her glasses. Mr. Callahan, that's going to leave them unable to make payroll this Friday. Good, I said. They can learn what cash flow feels like when it's not my cash. Third, I sat down at my kitchen island and wrote a single email to the entire Academy board, copying every parent whose kid trained there. Subject line, effective immediately, change in financial support. Body, one paragraph explaining that after 7 years of sole funding, I was stepping away and wished them well under the new visionary leadership. I attached the bank statements showing exactly how much had come from my personal accounts. No emotion, just numbers. By noon, the replies started flooding in. Some parents were shocked. Some were angry at me. Most were confused. Tyler left 17 voicemails. Brooke sent texts that started sweet and ended with threats about how I was destroying my own grandson's future. I read every one, then blocked the numbers. That afternoon, Marcus called me back. His voice was quiet, the way it gets when he's looking at something ugly. Jack, they've already lawyered up. Their counsel sent a letter this morning demanding you continue funding under the original gentleman's agreement. They're also floating the idea of a conservatorship petition, claiming you've shown signs of cognitive decline since Sarah passed. I laughed once, short and dry. They want to declare me senile so they can keep spending my money. Cute. Marcus didn't laugh. They've got a psychiatrist lined up already. And they're preparing media packets painting you as unstable, reckless with money, emotionally volatile. The usual elder abuse playbook, but run in reverse. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the framed photo of Sarah on the wall. She was smiling in her garden, the one she never got to finish because the treatments took everything. Then let's play, I said. But we play my way. Forensic accountants. Hidden recordings from every family meeting for the last 2 years. And Marcus? I want body cam footage if they try to come to my house again. He was quiet for a beat. You've been expecting this. I've been preparing for it, I corrected. There's a difference. The first shot across the bow came 3 days later. A local sports blog published an exclusive claiming I had been making erratic financial decisions, liquidating assets without reason, and that concerned family members were worried about my mental state. The article quoted anonymous sources close to the family, saying I had become paranoid and hostile after the playoff win. It even mentioned that I had refused medical evaluation when asked. I read it once, forwarded it to Marcus with a single note, Exhibit A. Then I drove to the academy myself, not to beg, not to negotiate, just to collect the last personal items from the office they still hadn't changed the locks on. When I walked in, Tyler was there with Brooke and 2 men in expensive suits I didn't recognize. Dad? Tyler started, voice already cracking the way it used to when he was 10 and got caught lying. We can talk about this. The article was just to get your attention. Brooke stepped forward, arms crossed, designer watch catching the light. You're embarrassing the family, Jack. The kids are asking why Grandpa is trying to ruin everything. We're only trying to protect the academy. And you. I looked at my son, really looked at him. The same eyes Sarah gave him, the same jawline. But the man standing there was someone I no longer recognized. Protect me, I repeated. By filing for conservatorship behind my back? The 2 suits shifted uncomfortably. One of them cleared his throat. Mr. Callahan, we're here in a mediation capacity. Your family is prepared to drop the petition if you agree to resume funding at the previous level and sign a simple power of attorney for operational decisions. I smiled the same cold smile I'd given the camera on the pitch. Here's my counteroffer. You repay every dollar I've ever wired into this place, with interest calculated at the prime rate plus 3%. You vacate the house in the hill country that's still in my name, and you issue a public apology on the same field where I was called a relic. Then we'll talk about what family means. Brooke laughed, sharp and ugly. You're delusional. The academy would collapse without us. The kids need stability. The kids needed a grandfather who wasn't treated like an ATM, I said quietly. They'll survive. I did the math. With the talent pipeline we built, the Academy can run clean on sponsorships and fees. But that requires actual management, not lifestyle funding. Tyler finally spoke, voice low. Dad, please. We have obligations. Payroll, vendors. The grandkids' tuition is due next month. I picked up the box of my personal things, a couple of old cleats, a faded photo of Sarah at my final match, and the original Academy charter with both our signatures. Then I suggest you explain to your children why their parents spent 7 years treating their grandfather like a walking checkbook. Because from today forward, the only money leaving my accounts will be for causes that actually respect it. I walked out without waiting for an answer. Behind me, I heard Brooke's voice rising, already calling their lawyer. I didn't care. The recordings on the small device in my jacket pocket had caught every word. Marcus met me at a quiet diner on the edge of town that evening. He slid a fresh folder across the table. Forensic audit is back. They siphoned at least $2.4 million into personal accounts over the last 4 years. Fake consulting fees to Brooke's brother. Inflated player travel that somehow ended up as first-class tickets to Europe for the whole family. And look at this. He tapped a highlighted line. An LLC registered in Brooke's maiden name that had received $487,000 in marketing consulting payments from the Academy while she was listed as unpaid staff. I closed the folder slowly. Enough for wire fraud, enough for elder financial exploitation statutes in Texas, enough to bury them if we push. Marcus studied me. You want to push? I thought about the look on my grandson's face when he scored that winner, how he'd glanced toward the sideline expecting me to be proud, not realizing his own parents were already writing me out of the story. I thought about Sarah's garden, the one I still tended alone because no one else remembered how she liked the roses pruned. I want them to understand what it feels like when the money stops, I said. And then I want them to understand what it feels like when the law starts. The conservatorship petition was filed the following Monday. They claimed I suffered from rapid cognitive decline triggered by grief. They submitted affidavits from a psychiatrist I had never met, claiming I showed paranoid delusions and poor financial judgment. They even included screenshots of texts I had sent Tyler telling him to grow up and run your own damn academy. Somehow, those were presented as evidence of hostility rather than frustration. Marcus filed our response the same day, along with a motion to dismiss and a counterclaim for financial abuse. Attached were the forensic audit, 7 years of wire transfers, and the first batch of recordings where Brooke could be heard laughing about how the old man will never notice another $100,000 missing. The judge scheduled an emergency hearing for the following week. I spent the days in between doing something I hadn't done in years. I went back to the small public park where I used to train alone after retiring, the one with the cracked concrete pitch and the rusted goals. I laced up my old cleats, the ones with the worn-out studs, and I ran drills until my lungs burned and my knees reminded me I was 42, not 22. Kids from the neighborhood started showing up to watch. One afternoon, a skinny 12-year-old with scuffed sneakers asked if I could show him how to strike a ball the way I used to. I spent an hour with him, correcting his plant foot, teaching him to lean into the shot. When he finally smashed one into the top corner, his face lit up like he'd won the Champions League. That night, I slept better than I had since the playoff match. The hearing was held in a small courtroom downtown. No cameras, thank God. Just the judge, 2 bailiffs, our respective legal teams, and Tyler and Brooke sitting at the petitioner's table looking like they'd already won. Their lawyer opened with a dementia narrative, playing clips of me walking away from the pitch after Brooke's speech, claiming my detached smile was evidence of emotional instability. They submitted bank records showing large withdrawals, conveniently omitting that those withdrawals were me moving my own money into protected trusts after I realized what was happening. Marcus didn't interrupt. He let them build their house of cards. Then he stood up. Your Honor, we have 7 years of meticulous records showing Mr. Callahan single-handedly funded an academy that his son and daughter-in-law have treated as a personal piggy bank. We have forensic evidence of over $2 million diverted to personal use. And we have audio recordings, lawfully obtained on Mr. Callahan's own property, in which the petitioners openly discuss continuing to extract funds even after he expressed concerns. He played the first recording.
Brooks' voice filled the courtroom, crystal clear. Just keep the old man happy for another year. Once the league expands the franchise slot, we can push him out and live off the Academy endowment for the rest of our lives.
Tyler's laugh followed right after. The judge's face changed. Their lawyer tried to object, claiming the recordings were illegal. Marcus produced the timestamps and property ownership documents proving every conversation had taken place in my own home. I watched Tyler's face go pale. Brooke's perfect makeup couldn't hide the way her hands started to shake. The judge called a short recess. When we returned, he looked straight at me. Mr. Callahan, do you wish to address the court? I stood. My knees didn't tremble. My voice didn't crack. Your Honor, I spent my entire career on the pitch chasing one thing: respect. I thought I could buy it for my family by giving them everything. Turns out respect can't be wired. It has to be earned. I'm not here to destroy my son's dream. I'm here to stop him from destroying what's left of mine. If they want to run an academy, they can do it with their own money, their own sweat, and their own integrity. I'm done financing fantasies. I sat down. The judge ruled from the bench. Conservatorship denied. Counterclaim for financial abuse granted, pending full trial. Tyler and Brooke were ordered to provide a full accounting within 30 days and were prohibited from contacting me or accessing any of my accounts without written permission through counsel. As we left the courtroom, Tyler tried to approach me in the hallway. Dad, we can still fix this. For the kids. I stopped, looked at the man who used to be my boy, and felt something inside me finally settle. Not anger anymore, just clarity. The kids deserve to know their grandfather isn't a relic, I said. But they also deserve parents who don't lie, steal, and then try to lock their own father away when the money runs out. When you're ready to live like men instead of entitled children, you know where to find me. Until then, stay off my property and out of my life. Brooke opened her mouth. I raised one hand. Save it. The microphone's not yours anymore. I walked out into the Texas sun and didn't look back. 6 months later, the academy still exists, but under new management. I sold my remaining stake to a group of former teammates who actually understand the meaning of legacy. The money they paid me went straight into a trust for inner-city kids who show up at that cracked concrete pitch every afternoon. I coach them myself 3 days a week. No contracts, no board meetings, just cleats, grass, and the pure sound of a ball hitting the back of the net. Tyler and Brooke kept the house in the hill country after a lengthy negotiation that cost them most of what they'd siphoned. They also paid back $1.9 million in restitution as part of a civil settlement to avoid criminal charges. The federal investigation is still open, but I told the prosecutors I wouldn't push for prison time. Some lessons hit harder when you have to live with the consequences instead of hiding behind bars. My grandson still texts me sometimes. Short messages. Grandpa, I scored 2 goals today. I always reply the same way. Proud of you. Keep working hard. And remember, the best goals are the ones you earn yourself. I never answer calls from Tyler or Brooke. The boundaries are steel now, and I sleep better for it. Some nights I sit on the back porch with a glass of that same bourbon and talk to Sarah like she can still hear me. I tell her about the kids at the park, about the way the skinny 12-year-old is starting to bend the ball like a pro. I tell her I finally stopped trying to buy love and started protecting what's left of my own life. She doesn't answer, of course. But the wind moves through the roses I planted in her memory, and sometimes I swear they nod. I was never a sentimental relic. I was just a man who finally learned the difference between giving everything and giving yourself away. And for the first time in 7 years, the only name on the checks I write is mine. I never told anyone how much those first weeks after the hearing actually cost me in sleep. The ruling was clean on paper, but the silence that followed felt heavier than any roar from 42,000 fans. Tyler stopped texting. Brooke's lawyers sent daily demands for clarification on the repayment schedule. My grandson's birthday came and went without a single call. I sat in the same study where I'd once approved another $1 million transfer and realized the house was too quiet. Not peaceful quiet, empty quiet. That was when the real numbers started to hit differently. I pulled every bank statement again, not for the audit this time, but for myself. 7 years, $18.7 million. Broken down, it looked almost mundane on the page. $214,000 average per month. Some months it was rent for the academy facility when revenue dipped. Other months it was new turf, new goals, new vans for away games. But the ugly line items were the ones that never made the pitch. $87,000 wired to a scouting consultant who turned out to be Brooke's sister in Miami. $142,000 for player nutrition programs that somehow paid for a family trip to Cabo. $319,000 in credit card advances that Tyler swore were for emergency medical coverage for academy talent, but landed in their joint account the same week they bought new matching Range Rovers. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is loud. This was colder. This was the slow realization that I had spent the last years of my wife's life savings trying to buy a seat at a table where I was never welcome, only useful. Marcus called on a Tuesday morning while I was drinking coffee on the back porch. "Jack, they've hired a new firm, big one out of Dallas. They're preparing a motion to reconsider the conservatorship on grounds of new evidence of incapacity. They're also shopping a story to ESPN claiming you're liquidating assets out of spite and harming the development of young American talent." I watched a cardinal land on the feeder Sarah used to fill every morning.
"Let them shop,"
I said. "I've got something better than spin. I've got receipts." What I didn't tell Marcus right then was that I had started wearing a small recording device again, the same discreet model I'd used in family meetings. Not because I expected another ambush, but because I refused to be caught without proof ever again. Old habits from the pitch. Always know where the ball is coming from. 3 days later, they made their next move. I was at the public park running a simple finishing drill with the neighborhood kids when my phone buzzed with a news alert. "Callahan family feud. Soccer legend accused of elder self-neglect." The article was slick. It quoted close family sources saying I had refused medical checkups, isolated myself, and was making irrational financial decisions that threatened the future of the academy I had built. There was even a blurry photo of me on the cracked concrete pitch looking disheveled because I'd been sweating after 40 minutes of actual work. I read it once, forwarded it to Marcus, and went back to coaching the 12-year-old whose left foot was finally starting to listen to him. Some battles you fight with lawyers. Others you fight by refusing to flinch. That night, Tyler showed up at my gate, alone. No Brooke, no lawyers, just him in the same coaching jacket he'd worn on the pitch the night everything exploded. The security camera caught him standing there for almost 4 minutes before he pressed the buzzer. I let him wait. When I finally walked down the drive, I didn't open the gate. I stood on my side of the iron bars and looked at the man who used to beg me to play one more game of backyard soccer after dinner. "Dad," he started, voice already cracking. "This has gone too far. The kids miss you. Brooke's upset. We're all hurting." I kept my hands in my pockets. Hurting is watching your only son treat you like an ATM for 7 years and then try to have you declared incompetent when the tap runs dry. That's hurting. He gripped the bars. We made mistakes. I made mistakes. But the academy needs you. The league is watching. If this story gets bigger, sponsors will pull out. Think about the kids who actually play for us, not just our family drama. I almost laughed. The kids who actually play? You mean the ones whose development I funded while you and Brooke treated the place like a country club? I think about them every day. That's why I'm done letting my money disappear into your lifestyle. Tyler's face twisted. For a second, I saw the little boy who used to cry when he missed a penalty. Then the mask slipped back into place. You're really going to let pride destroy everything Sarah helped build? The mention of my wife's name was a cheap shot, and he knew it. I stepped closer to the gate so he could see my eyes clearly under the security light. Sarah built this family with love, not leverage. She never once treated anyone like a resource. You want to invoke her name? Fine. She would have been ashamed of what you've become. And she would have told me to protect what's left of my life the same way I protected hers through every round of chemo. I turned to walk back up the drive. "Dad, wait!" His voice broke for real this time. "They're talking about filing criminal charges if you don't settle. Brooke says if we lose the academy, we lose everything. The house, the cars, the kids' schools. We'll have to declare bankruptcy." "Is that what you want for your grandkids?" I stopped but didn't turn around. What I want is for my grandkids to grow up knowing their grandfather wasn't a fool, and that their parents learned how to stand on their own feet. Bankruptcy might be the best teacher they ever get. I kept walking. Behind me, I heard him slam his fist against the gate once, then the sound of his truck starting. The camera caught him sitting in the driveway for another 6 minutes before he finally left. I saved the footage. Marcus would want it. The next morning, the real escalation arrived by courier, a thick envelope from their new Dallas firm. Inside was a formal petition for emergency conservatorship, backed by a fresh psychiatric evaluation claiming I showed clear signs of cognitive impairment and financial impulsivity. They had managed to get a doctor, one I had never met, to sign off based on collateral information provided by family. Collateral. Nice word for lies. Attached were screenshots of large transfers I had made right after the playoff match, moving money into irrevocable trusts for the inner-city program. They framed it as me hiding assets from legitimate family obligations. Marcus was in my kitchen within the hour. He read the petition once, then looked at me over his glasses. "They're doubling down. This is expensive for them. They're burning through whatever cash they have left." "Good," I said. "Let's make it more expensive." We spent the rest of the day building the counterfile. Forensic accountants had traced another $680,000 in questionable expenses since the initial audit. One of the neighborhood kids' fathers turned out to be a retired FBI forensic audio analyst. He enhanced every recording I had, confirming timestamps and locations. We added sworn affidavits from 3 Academy board members who had quietly resigned when they realized where the money was actually going. But the strongest piece wasn't paper. It was video. 2 years earlier, during one of our monthly family strategy dinners, Brooke had gotten drunk enough to say on camera, while Tyler laughed beside her, "Honestly, once the old man kicks off or we get him declared unfit, the Academy endowment becomes ours. We just have to keep him happy until then." The camera had been rolling because I was showing them old match footage on the big screen. They never noticed the phone propped up recording the whole night. I had never planned to use it. I had hoped I'd never need to. Now I needed to. Marcus watched the clip 3 times. When it ended, he was quiet for a long moment. "Jack, this is nuclear. If we submit this, there's no going back to any kind of relationship." I poured us both more coffee. There hasn't been a relationship for years. There's only been transactions. I'm done pretending otherwise. The night before the second hearing, I did something I hadn't done since Sarah died. I went through her old journals. She had kept one for every year of our marriage. In the last one, the one she wrote while the chemo made her handwriting shaky, she had written a single line on the final page. "Tell Jack he doesn't have to keep carrying everyone. Sometimes the strongest thing a man can do is set the load down." I closed the journal and slept 6 straight hours for the first time in weeks. Courtroom 2 was smaller, more formal. The same judge, but this time there were 2 additional clerks taking notes and a guardian ad litem appointed by the court to evaluate my competence independently. Tyler and Brooke sat on the left side looking polished and desperate. Their new lead attorney was a sharp woman in a navy suit who opened by painting me as a tragic figure, once great athlete, now declining, manipulated by grief, making decisions that harmed his own legacy. She called their psychiatrist first. The man droned on about observed patterns of isolation and impulsivity based on family reports. He never once spoke to me directly. Marcus stood for cross-examination and simply asked one question. "Doctor, Did you review any of Mr. Callahan's personal financial records, medical history, or speak with him before forming your opinion? The doctor hesitated. My assessment was based on collateral information provided by the concerned family members. Marcus smiled thinly and sat down. Then it was our turn. We started with the bank records. Page after page projected on the screen, every wire transfer highlighted in red. The judge's eyebrows rose higher with each million. When we reached the LLC in Brooks' maiden name, Tyler shifted in his seat like the chair had suddenly grown thorns. Marcus played the first recording. Brooks' voice again, clear as the day she took the microphone on the pitch. Just keep writing the checks, Tyler. He'll never notice. Old athletes are all the same, sentimental and slow. The courtroom went dead silent. The guardian ad litem, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, asked to see the full video. We played it. When Brooks' line about waiting for me to kick off or get declared unfit landed, even the court reporter stopped typing for a second. Tyler looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him. Brooks' face had gone the color of old paper. The judge called another recess. When we returned, he addressed the petitioners directly. Mr. and Mrs. Callahan, the court has seen enough preliminary evidence to be deeply concerned about the motivations behind this petition. This is not a case of a concerned family protecting a vulnerable elder. This is a case of financial dependence turning into attempted financial coercion. The petition for conservatorship is denied. Furthermore, the court is referring the matter to the district attorney for review of potential elder exploitation charges. He looked straight at my son. Mr. Callahan, you and your wife have 30 days to produce a full accounting and begin restitution. Failure to comply will result in contempt findings and possible asset freezes. Mr. Jack Callahan, you are under no obligation to provide any further financial support. The court recognizes your right to protect your remaining assets. I stood up slowly. Thank you, Your Honor. Outside in the hallway, Brooke tried to approach me one last time. Her voice was low, urgent, the same tone she used when she needed another check. Jack, please. We're family. This will destroy the kids. I looked at her for a long moment, seeing the woman who once called me the greatest father-in-law alive, while signing expense reports that padded her wardrobe. You destroyed the family the day you decided my money mattered more than my dignity, I said quietly. The kids will be fine. Children are resilient. It's adults who refuse to grow up that break everything. I walked past her without another word. Tyler didn't even try to speak. He just stood there, holding his wife's arm, like a man who finally understood the weight of every dollar he had never earned. That night I sat on the porch again. The cardinal was back at the feeder. I raised my glass of bourbon toward the sky and spoke to Sarah like she could hear every word. I set the load down, love, just like you told me to. The wind moved through the roses. They nodded. The days after the second hearing felt like the quiet before the final whistle in a match you're winning but still have to finish. I kept my routine tight. Mornings at the cracked concrete park coaching the neighborhood kids, afternoons reviewing documents with Marcus, evenings sitting with Sarah's roses and a single glass of bourbon. No drama, no interviews. Just the slow, deliberate work of closing accounts and tightening every boundary I still controlled. But Tyler and Brooke weren't finished. On the 10th day after the ruling, a process server showed up at my gate with a thick new filing. This time, they weren't asking for conservatorship. They were suing me for breach of oral contract and promissory estoppel, claiming I had verbally promised lifetime funding for the academy and that my sudden cutoff had caused them irreparable financial harm. They wanted the court to force me to resume payments and pay damages for the collapse of their operations. Marcus read the complaint over speakerphone while I was lacing up my cleats for evening drills. He actually laughed once, short and sharp. They're creative, I'll give them that. They attached affidavits from 3 academy staff claiming you said, quote, "This place will always be taken care of as long as I'm breathing." I tied the second knot harder than necessary. I said I'd support the kids' development, not underwrite their vacations and shopping sprees. We'll crush it, Marcus said. But they're also leaking more stories. A podcast dropped an episode this morning titled Soccer Legend Turns His Back on His Own Legacy. They're painting you as bitter and vindictive. I stood up, cleats clicking on the porch tiles. Then let's give them something real to talk about. That same afternoon, I did two things that changed the temperature of the war. First, I authorized Marcus to file a full countersuit for elder financial exploitation, unjust enrichment, and breach of fiduciary duty. We attached the enhanced recordings, the forensic audit showing the $2.4 million diverted, and every wire transfer receipt. We also added a demand for attorney fees and punitive damages. Second, I drove to the small studio of a local investigative reporter I had known for years. No cameras rolling yet, just coffee and a USB drive. "Rachel," I said, sliding the drive across the table. "I'm not asking for a hit piece. I'm asking for the truth. Every number, every recording, every lie. Run it when you're ready, but run it clean." She looked at the drive like it might bite her.
"Jack, this could blow up the entire MLS narrative about family-run academies."
"Good," I answered. "Maybe some other retired players will think twice before they turn their retirement into someone else's retirement plan." I left her office lighter than I had felt in months. The countersuit hit their lawyers like a studs-up tackle. Within 48 hours, their breach of contract motion was amended to include desperate requests for mediation. Brooke's new attorney called Marcus directly and suggested a private family resolution to avoid unnecessary public embarrassment. Marcus's reply was one sentence: "My client has no interest in private resolutions that involve writing more checks. See you in court." The night before the next hearing, I couldn't sleep. Not from fear, but from the weight of what was coming. I walked the house at 2 a.m., ending up in the room that used to be Tyler's when he was a boy. The walls still had faint marks where his soccer posters had hung. I sat on the edge of the old bed and remembered the night he scored his first academy goal and ran straight to me instead of his mother. That boy was gone. The man who replaced him had chosen money over blood. At 4 a.m., I made a decision. I opened my laptop and transferred another $250,000 into the trust for the inner city kids. Not because I owed anyone anything, but because I refused to let their parents' greed poison the only good thing still growing from those 7 years. Then I went back to bed and actually slept until the alarm. Courtroom 3 was packed this time. Word had leaked. Reporters from 2 sports networks sat in the back row. The guardian ad litem was back, looking even more stern. Tyler and Brooke arrived separately, which told me everything about the state of their marriage. Their lead attorney opened with a softer tone, trying to humanize them. "Your Honor, my clients acknowledge mistakes were made in financial oversight. But Mr. Jack Callahan's abrupt withdrawal of support after years of consistent funding has left dozens of young athletes without resources. This is not about greed. This is about continuity for the next generation." Marcus stood before the echo faded. "Your Honor, continuity built on fraud is not continuity. It is theft with extra steps." He began with the numbers. Projected on the large screen were side-by-side comparisons, academy revenue versus personal spending. The gap was grotesque. While the academy struggled to pay part-time coaches, Brooke had expensed $47,000 in wardrobe for sponsor events in a single year. While scholarship kids shared old balls, Tyler had approved a $92,000 leadership retreat in Aspen that included spa treatments and private wine tastings. The judge interrupted once. "Counsel, are you telling me Mr. Callahan funded luxury trips while academy players trained with donated equipment?" Marcus didn't even blink. "Yes, Your Honor. And we have the receipts." Then came the recordings again. This time the full 2-minute clip where Brooke laughed about waiting for me to kick off. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear the court reporter's fingers pause on the keys. Tyler dropped his head into his hands. Brooke stared straight ahead, jaw tight, eyes glassy but dry. No real tears. Just the panic of people who finally understood the tap wasn't just turned off, it was being ripped out of the wall. The guardian ad litem asked to speak. She looked at me first. Mr. Callahan, in my independent evaluation, I found you fully competent, financially responsible, and emotionally stable. Your decision to stop funding appears rational given the evidence of misuse. Then she turned to Tyler and Brooke.
What concerns me is the pattern of entitlement and the willingness to weaponize the court system against the very person who built the foundation you stand on.
This borders on abuse. Their attorney tried to recover, arguing that family understanding should be honored even without written contracts. The judge cut him off. Counsel, an oral promise to support a child's dream does not equal a blank check for life, especially when that child is 38 years old, married, and has repeatedly demonstrated poor stewardship of the funds provided. He ruled from the bench again. The breach of contract claim was dismissed with prejudice. The countersuit for financial exploitation would proceed to discovery. Tyler and Brooke were ordered to repay $1.2 million within 90 days as partial restitution, with the remainder to be determined after full accounting. Any further attempts to contact me or enter my property without permission would result in restraining orders. As we left the courtroom, a reporter stepped forward with a microphone. Mr. Callahan, any comment on today's ruling? I stopped, looked straight into the lens, and spoke the first public words I had said since the night on the pitch. I spent 7 years and nearly $19 million trying to build something meaningful for my son and my grandkids. What I learned is that legacy isn't bought with money, it's earned with character. If my family wants a relationship with me, they can start by showing some. Until then, I'll keep my money, my time, and my peace exactly where they belong, with people who respect them. I walked away without waiting for follow-up questions. That evening, the story broke online. Not the way they wanted. Rachel's investigative piece dropped with the full numbers, the recordings, and interviews with former Academy staff who confirmed the misuse. Comments flooded in. Some defended Tyler, calling me heartless. Most called out the entitlement. One viral thread from a retired MLS player read, "Fellow players, take note. Your kids are not your retirement plan." I didn't read the comments. I turned my phone off and went to the park instead. The skinny 12-year-old was waiting with 3 of his friends. They had brought their own balls this time, scuffed but proud. We worked on volleys until the streetlights came on. When I finally called it a night, the boy walked over and handed me a folded piece of paper. It was a drawing, stick figures, one old man kicking a ball, a bunch of kids cheering. At the bottom, in careful block letters, "Thank you for not giving up on us." I folded it carefully and put it in my pocket. Later that night, sitting with the Roses, I spoke to Sarah again. They tried to take everything, love. The money, the reputation, even my mind on paper. But they couldn't take this. The part of me that still knows how to teach a kid to strike a ball clean. The part that finally learned to say no. The wind moved through the garden. The roses nodded once more. I slept without dreams and woke up knowing the war wasn't over, but the battlefield had shifted. They still had one last card to play. I could feel it coming. And when it did, I would be ready. The last card came on a rainy Thursday morning, exactly 37 days after the courtroom dismissed their breach claim. I was in the kitchen pouring coffee when my phone lit up with a news alert from a national sports network. The headline read, "Soccer legend Jack Callahan accused of financial recklessness. Family seeks court protection for Academy." They had gone nuclear. Brooke and Tyler had filed a new motion in civil court, this time asking for a temporary injunction to freeze the remaining Academy accounts and force me to release owed operational funds under threat of contempt. Attached to the filing were fresh affidavits claiming I had hidden assets, engaged in suspicious large transfers right after the playoff match, and was actively trying to bankrupt the Academy out of spite. They even included a new psychiatric report, paid for by them, diagnosing me with adjustment disorder with depressed mood, and suggesting my decisions were emotionally driven rather than rational. Marcus called before I finished my first cup. His voice was tight. "They're trying to tie the accounts up so you can't move any more money into the inner city trust. They're also shopping this to every outlet that will listen, saying you're punishing innocent kids because of a family disagreement. I set the mug down.
Rain streaked the windows overlooking Sarah's garden.
How much are they asking the court to force me to pay? Another $4.8 million over the next 18 months, framed as previously promised support. They attached a spreadsheet they created themselves, backdated emails they claim prove oral agreements. I laughed once, low and cold. They forged emails? Allegedly. Our forensic IT team is already on it. But Jack, this filing includes a request for an emergency hearing next week. They want a judge to freeze your personal accounts pending review. I watched the rain hit the roses. Then we stopped playing defense. File the motion for summary judgment on the exploitation counterclaim. Submit the enhanced recordings, the bank forensics, and the new affidavits from the 3 board members who quit when they saw the books. And Marcus, prepare the criminal referral packet for the DA. Wire fraud, mail fraud, falsifying business records. Enough to make federal investigators take notice. He was quiet for a beat. You're ready to burn every bridge. Bridges built on lies were never worth crossing, I said.
Let's end this.
The emergency hearing was set for the following Tuesday. I spent the weekend doing 2 things. First, I met with the inner city program director and signed over another $300,000 from my personal funds, making it clear this money was irrevocable and separate from any academy entanglement. The kids would keep training no matter what happened in court. Second, I sat down with a small digital recorder and made a single, calm statement. No anger, just facts. I listed every major transfer with dates and amounts. I described the night Brooke took the microphone on the pitch and called me a sentimental relic. I spoke about Sarah's journals and the promise I made to stop carrying dead weight. Then I saved the file and sent it to Rachel with one note. Use if they try to paint me as unstable. Tuesday morning, the courtroom felt smaller, heavier. Rain pounded the roof. Tyler and Brooke arrived together this time, both in dark suits like they were attending a funeral. Theirs or mine, I wasn't sure. The new judge assigned to the injunction request was older, sharper, with the look of a man who had seen every version of family greed. Their attorney opened aggressively. Your Honor, Mr. Jack Callahan's refusal to honor long-standing financial commitments is threatening the very existence of a vital youth development program. We have evidence of sudden asset movements totaling over $550,000 in the weeks following the playoff match. This is not protection of personal wealth. This is punitive retaliation that harms dozens of young athletes. He projected their spreadsheet. Nice columns, clean numbers, completely fabricated. Marcus stood slowly. Your Honor, the only thing punitive here is the petitioner's continued attempt to treat my client's retirement as their personal slush fund. We have irrefutable forensic evidence that over $2.8 million has already been diverted for personal benefit. We also have new evidence that the oral agreements they cite were manufactured after the fact. He submitted the IT forensics report showing the emails had been created and backdated using software only accessible from Tyler's laptop. The judge's eyebrows rose. Then Marcus played the latest recording, the one from the night Tyler came to my gate alone. His voice filled the room, begging, then threatening. We'll have to declare bankruptcy. The kids will suffer. Is that what you want? The judge stopped the playback halfway through. I've heard enough. Mr. Callahan, do you wish to address the court before I rule on the injunction? I stood. Rain still drummed against the windows. My voice stayed even. Your Honor, I gave 7 years and almost $19 million because I believed I was building something for my son and my grandchildren. What I actually built was a lifestyle funded by my late wife's medical savings and my own retirement. When I stopped the transfers, they didn't come to me as family. They came with lawyers, psychiatrists, and forged documents trying to have me declared incompetent. That is not love or legacy. That is theft with extra paperwork. I will not be forced to fund it any longer. The Academy can survive on real revenue and honest management, or it can learn the same lesson every adult eventually faces. When the money runs out, you either grow up or go broke. I sat down. The judge looked at Tyler and Brooke for a long moment. The motion for temporary injunction is denied. Any attempt to freeze Mr. Callahan's accounts will be viewed as bad faith litigation. The counterclaim for financial exploitation will move forward on an expedited schedule. Petitioners are ordered to cease all public commentary that references Mr. Callahan's mental or financial capacity or face sanctions. He banged the gavel once. Outside the courthouse, the rain had eased to a drizzle. Rachel was waiting on the steps with a camera crew. This time, I didn't walk past. I stopped and gave her the statement I had recorded over the weekend. Calm, factual, no rage. Just the truth, with every number attached. That night, the story exploded across sports media. Not the victim narrative Tyler and Brooke wanted, the real one. Clips of Brooke on the pitch calling me a relic played side by side with the gate recording of Tyler begging. Comment sections filled with retired athletes sharing their own stories. One former captain posted, "We all know the type. The kid who never learned the game is about sacrifice, not salary." Tyler called from an unknown number at 11:47 p.m. I let it ring. He left a voicemail I didn't delete but never played. Brooke sent a single text. "You win. We'll sign whatever you want. Just don't destroy us publicly." I didn't reply. Instead, I drove to the cracked concrete park the next morning. The kids were already there, kicking balls through puddles. The skinny 12-year-old ran up with a new pair of second-hand cleats someone had donated. "Coach Jack, watch this!" He struck the ball clean, top corner, water spraying like sparks. I clapped once, sharp and genuine. That's how you do it. Earned, not given. Later that afternoon, Marcus called again. They've agreed to mediation tomorrow, neutral ground. Their side wants a global settlement to avoid the criminal referral. I thought about Sarah's last journal entry, about the roses nodding in the wind, about the drawing the boy had given me that still sat on my desk. "Tell them I'll be there," I said, "but I'm not negotiating money. I'm negotiating the end of contact, full repayment schedule, permanent restraining order on any further legal harassment, and a public statement admitting misuse of funds. Anything less, and the DA gets the full package on Monday." The mediation room was small and windowless. Tyler and Brooke sat on one side of the long table with two lawyers. I sat on the other with Marcus. No grandkids, no fake smiles, just exhaustion on their faces and steel in mine. Their lead mediator started with soft language about healing and family. I cut him off after 30 seconds. "We're not here to heal. We're here to settle accounts. Literally." Marcus slid the proposed settlement across the table. Full accounting and repayment of $2.8 million over 5 years, secured by liens on their properties. Permanent no-contact order except through counsel for any financial matters. A signed public statement admitting the Academy funds were misused for personal benefit. In exchange, I would not pursue criminal charges and would drop the remaining punitive damage claims. Brooke read it, and her hands started to shake. "This will ruin us." "You ruined yourselves," I said quietly. "I just stopped paying to watch." Tyler looked up, eyes red. "Dad, the kids. They'll grow up hearing this story. They'll grow up knowing their grandfather refused to be robbed and refused to lie about it," I answered. "That's a better inheritance than another luxury vacation." The mediator tried to find middle ground. I didn't move. After 4 hours, they signed. Every page, every condition. I walked out of that building without shaking hands. The public statement dropped 2 days later on the Academy's website and every sports outlet that had run the earlier stories. Short, signed by both Tyler and Brooke. It admitted serious lapses in financial oversight and personal use of Academy resources, and thanked me for past generous support, while acknowledging my right to withdraw it. No apologies to me personally. That was fine. I hadn't asked for one. The Academy restructured under new independent leadership. Sponsors returned once the smell of scandal faded. Tyler kept a coaching role, but at a reduced salary with strict oversight. Brooke was removed from all positions. They sold the Hill Country house to make the first restitution payment. I kept my distance. The inner-city program grew. We moved from the cracked concrete to a proper, small field donated by a local business that read the stories and wanted to help. I still coach 3 afternoons a week. The skinny 12-year-old now brings his younger brother. They call me Coach Jack, never Grandpa. That's exactly how I want it. Some nights, Tyler still drives past my house. I see the truck on the security cameras. He never stops. He never rings the bell. I think he's trying to find the courage to knock one day without lawyers or demands. When and if that day comes, I'll decide then. Until then, the gate stays locked and the boundaries stay steel. Sarah's roses are blooming again this spring. I tend them every weekend. Sometimes I talk to her about the kids at the field, about the way the ball sounds when it's struck clean and true. I tell her I've finally learned the difference between legacy and liability. The wind moves through the garden. The roses nod. I smile, take a sip of bourbon, and feel something I hadn't felt in 7 years. Peace. Not the loud kind that comes with cheers from 42,000 fans. The quiet kind that comes when you finally stop paying for love that was never real and start investing in the life you still have left. I was never a sentimental relic. I was a man who learned, late but completely, that the best goals are the ones you protect with everything you have, including the courage to say no. And for the first time since that night on the pitch, I sleep like a man who owns his own future again. The mediation papers were signed, the restitution schedule locked in, and the public statement posted. But the silence that followed wasn't peace. It was the hush right before the final whistle, when both teams know the score, but one still wants to foul on the way out. I felt it in my bones the same way I used to feel a defender closing in from behind. Something was still coming. It arrived on a humid Friday evening, 2 weeks after the settlement. I was at the new field with the kids, working on defensive shape, when my phone vibrated in my pocket. Marcus. I stepped off the grass and answered. Jack, we have a problem. Tyler and Brooke just filed an emergency motion claiming you're violating the settlement by publicly defaming them through the inner city program. They're asking the court to block any further donations tied to your name and to force you to remove all references to the Academy scandal from your coaching bios. They attach screenshots of parents posting on social media thanking Coach Jack for stepping up where family failed. I wiped sweat from my forehead and watched a 12-year-old slide tackle a ball cleanly. They're still trying to control the narrative. Worse, Marcus said.
They're also shopping a news story to a podcast network.
The angle is, grieving son begs legendary father for reconciliation while being painted as the villain. They're framing the restitution as extortion and claiming the recordings were taken out of context under emotional duress. I looked across the field at the kids laughing, arguing over who got the next shot.
How fast can we respond?
Motion to enforce the settlement is already drafted. But Jack, if they keep dragging this into public, the kids at your program might get caught in the crossfire. Some parents are already asking questions. I ended the call and blew the whistle. Practice wrapped early. As the boys packed up, the skinny one, now calling himself Little Rocket, walked over. Coach Jack, my dad saw something online about you and your son. Is everything okay? I crouched so we were eye level. Everything's fine, son. Sometimes grown-ups fight over money instead of playing fair. But the game on the field? That's still honest. Keep your head up and your passes sharp. He nodded, but his eyes stayed worried. That look stayed with me all the way home. That night I sat in the study with every document from the last 8 months spread across the desk. Bank records, signed settlement, enhanced recordings, the new motion. I realized they weren't fighting for the Academy anymore. They were fighting for the last scraps of control over how the story ended. They wanted me quiet, compliant, and preferably still writing checks. I picked up the phone and called Marcus back. File the enforcement motion first thing Monday. Attach every social media post they've made since the settlement, and prepare the package for the DA again. If they breach the no public comment clause, we don't negotiate. We prosecute. Monday's hearing was short and brutal. The same judge who had denied the injunction looked at their new filing like it was spoiled milk. Their attorney tried to argue emotional distress and parental alienation. Marcus played the exact clause from the signed settlement. Petitioners agree to cease all public commentary regarding Mr. Jack Callahan's mental capacity, financial decisions, or family matters. The judge didn't even let them finish their rebuttal. The settlement was clear. You signed it. Any further public statements or motions that attempt to relitigate settled facts will result in immediate sanctions, including potential jail time for contempt. Motion denied. Case closed on this issue. Tyler looked like he'd been punched in the gut. Brooke stared at the table, fingers twisting the wedding ring I had helped pay for years ago. Outside the courthouse, Marcus clapped me on the shoulder. That should shut him down. I nodded, but I knew better. Desperate people don't read court orders. They rewrite them in their heads until the story feels fair again. The next blow came through my grandson, a text from an unknown number at 9:17 p.m., a video attachment. In it, my 10-year-old grandson sat on the couch in their new, smaller rental house, eyes red, reading from a script someone had clearly written for him. Grandpa Jack, why won't you help us anymore? Dad says you're mad at us and that's why we had to sell the big house. I miss the academy. I miss when you used to come to my games. Please don't be mad. The camera panned to Tyler in the background, arms crossed, nodding solemnly. I watched it once. Then I saved it, forwarded it to Marcus with the note, "Exhibit for contempt," and I turned my phone off. The following morning I drove to the field early. The kids weren't there yet. I sat on the bench and thought about my own father, a hard-working man who never had 2 nickels to rub together, but taught me that a man's word and a man's work were the only currency that mattered. I had tried to give my son the opposite, everything money could buy. Look where it led. Little Rocket showed up first, dragging his younger brother. Coach, you okay? You look like you lost a final. I forced a smile. Just thinking about old matches, kid. Sometimes the hardest ones are the ones you win but still feel the bruises. We started drills. Simple, clean, no drama. By the time the rest of the group arrived, I was sweating and focused. The ball didn't lie. The field didn't care about podcasts or court filings. For 2 hours, I was just Coach Jack again. That evening, Marcus called. They've withdrawn the latest motion. Quietly. Their attorney reached out. They're offering to accelerate the repayment schedule if you agree not to pursue contempt on the video. I was standing in Sarah's garden, pruning dead blooms. Tell them no deal. The video of my grandson is a breach. They weaponized a child. I want the judge to see it. And I want a permanent no-contact order that includes the grandkids until they're 18 and can decide for themselves. Marcus exhaled. That's nuclear, Jack. They made it nuclear when they put a 10-year-old in front of a camera to guilt-trip me, I said. I'm done negotiating with people who use children as shields. The contempt hearing was scheduled for the end of the month. This time, the courtroom had a different energy. Reporters were banned, but the guardian ad litem was back, and a child psychologist had been appointed to review the video. Tyler and Brooke sat alone on their side. No new lawyers, just the 2 of them, looking smaller than I had ever seen them. Their attorney tried one last soft approach. Your Honor, the video was a private family moment. Emotions were high. No harm was intended to Mr. Callahan's reputation. Marcus played the video in open court. The boy's shaky voice filled the room. Grandpa Jack, why won't you help us anymore? Tyler nodding in the background like a director. The judge's face hardened. The guardian ad litem spoke next, voice clipped. This is emotional manipulation of a minor. The child has clearly been coached. In my professional opinion, continued contact between the petitioners and Mr. Callahan poses a risk of further psychological harm to the grandchildren. The judge ruled without leaving the bench. Contempt finding issued. Tyler and Brooke were fined $25,000 each, payable immediately to the inner-city program. A permanent restraining order was entered. No contact with me, direct or indirect, including through the grandchildren, until each child turns 18. Any violation would result in jail time. The remaining restitution was accelerated to 3 years, secured by liens on every asset they still owned. When the gavel fell, Tyler finally looked at me. Not with anger, not with entitlement, just hollow exhaustion. Brooke wouldn't meet my eyes. I stood and left without a word. That night the house felt different, lighter. I opened a new bottle of bourbon, poured one glass, and carried it to the garden. The roses were thick with blooms. I raised the glass toward the sky. Sarah, they used the boy. They actually used our grandson as a pawn. But it's over now. The load is down, the boundaries are steel, and the kids on the field, they're learning the game the right way. The wind moved. The roses nodded harder than usual, petals brushing my arm like a touch I hadn't felt in years. I slept through the night without waking once. The next chapter started the following Saturday. I was at the field when a black SUV pulled up. Out stepped my grandson, alone, wearing a backpack and looking nervous. He walked straight to me while the other kids watched. "Grandpa, the judge said I couldn't talk to you until I'm 18. But I'm 10. That's a long time. I just wanted to say I'm sorry about the video. Mom made me read it. Dad said if I didn't, we'd lose the house. I didn't want to hurt you." I knelt, heart tight but steady. "You didn't hurt me, son. They did. And the judge is trying to protect you. You're not supposed to be here." He looked down at his cleats. "I know, but I snuck out. I wanted you to know I still love you, and I still want to play like you taught me." I put a hand on his shoulder. "Then play. Train hard. Be honest on the field and off it. When you're 18, if you still want a relationship with me, the gate will be open. Until then, I need you to respect the rules. Go home before they notice you're gone." He hugged me quick and fierce, then ran back to the SUV where a worried driver waited. I watched the car disappear down the road and felt the last piece of the old weight lift. The boundaries held. The steel didn't bend. Months passed. The restitution checks started arriving on time. The academy stabilized under new leadership. Tyler kept a low-profile coaching job. Brooke took a marketing position at a local gym. They never contacted me again. I kept coaching. The program grew to 3 fields and 60 kids. Little Rocket made the local select team and dedicated his first goal to Coach Jack, who taught me to earn it. Some evenings I still sit with the roses and talk to Sarah. I tell her about the new kids, about the way the ball sounds when it's struck with heart instead of entitlement. I tell her the man who once tried to buy love finally learned to protect what was left of his own life. The wind moves. The roses nod. And I smile, because for the first time in nearly 8 years, the only name on the checks I write is mine. The only legacy I'm building is one that can't be stolen. And the only voice I listen to when the final whistle blows is the quiet, steady one that says, "You did enough. Now live." The courtroom was nearly empty the day the final gavel fell on everything that remained. It was a crisp October morning, almost 10 months after the night Brooke had taken the microphone on the pitch and called me a sentimental relic in front of 42,000 people. The same judge who had denied every injunction and issued every contempt finding sat at the bench with a thick folder in front of him. Tyler and Brooke were there with one attorney between them. I sat alone with Marcus. No cameras, no reporters, no grandkids. Just the quiet mechanics of money, law, and the last threads of a family that had stopped being a family years ago. Marcus stood first. "Your Honor, we are here for the final accounting and enforcement of the settlement agreement dated June 17th. Petitioners have made 3 restitution payments totaling $840,000. However, forensic review shows they are still short on documentation for $312,000 in previously identified personal expenses. We also move to enforce the permanent no-contact order after a verified breach involving the minor grandson." Their attorney rose quickly, voice already tired. "Your Honor, my clients have complied to the best of their ability under difficult financial circumstances. The remaining balance is being addressed through the sale of their remaining vehicle. As for the alleged contact with the grandson, it was a one-time, spontaneous moment initiated by the child himself. No further breaches have occurred." The judge looked over his glasses at Tyler and Brooke. "Mr. and Mrs. Callahan, you signed a settlement that was generous under the circumstances. You agreed to full repayment, full transparency, and absolute silence. Yet here we are again with missing paperwork and a child used as a messenger. I have reviewed the video your grandson recorded at your direction. I have read the guardian ad litem's report. This court does not take lightly the weaponization of minors in adult financial disputes. He turned a page. The remaining restitution of $1.96 million is hereby accelerated. You will liquidate all non-essential assets within 60 days and remit the full balance to Mr. Jack Callahan's designated trust for youth soccer development. Failure to comply will result in wage garnishment, asset seizure, and referral to the district attorney for criminal contempt. The permanent restraining order is expanded. No direct or indirect contact with Mr. Callahan or any program associated with his name until each grandchild reaches the age of 18. Any violation will be treated as a felony-level breach. He paused, then looked straight at my son. Mr. Tyler Callahan, you are 38 years old. It is long past time you learned to stand on your own feet without using your father as a human credit card. Mrs. Brooke Callahan, the same applies to you. The academy you once treated as your personal ATM will survive or fail on its own merits. Mr. Jack Callahan owes you nothing further. The gavel came down once, sharp and final. Tyler stood slowly, shoulders rounded like the weight of every wired dollar had finally landed on him. Brooke kept her eyes on the table, fingers white around the edge of her purse. Neither of them looked at me as they left. I didn't expect them to. Marcus closed his briefcase. It's done, Jack. The liens are in place. The trust is bulletproof. If they miss one payment, the court will take the rest. I nodded once. Good. Send the next check straight to the field fund. Those kids don't need to know where it came from. Outside the courthouse, the air smelled like fallen leaves and distant rain. I walked to my truck alone, got in, and sat for a long minute with the engine off. No cheering crowds, no flashing cameras. Just the quiet click of the settlement folder in my lap and the knowledge that every bridge built on money had finally been burned to ash. I drove straight to the field. The kids were already there, 30 of them now, running through a possession drill I had taught them last week. Little Rocket saw me first and waved both arms like he'd just scored in the World Cup final. Coach Jack, we saved the best balls for you! I laced up my old cleats, the ones with the worn studs that still remembered every pitch I'd ever played on, and stepped onto the grass. For the next 90 minutes there was nothing but movement, laughter, the solid thump of leather on leather, and the clean sting of a well-struck shot. No lawyers, no restitution schedules, no 10-year-old reading scripted guilt from a couch. Just soccer the way it was meant to be. Honest, hard, and earned. After practice, Little Rocket's mother waited by the sideline. She handed me a small envelope. The parents took up a collection. It's not much, but we wanted you to know we see what you're doing here. Thank you for showing these kids that real legacy isn't bought, it's built. Inside was $1,847 in cash and a handwritten card signed by every family. I folded it carefully and put it in my pocket next to the drawing the boy had given me months earlier. That evening, I sat on the back porch with a single glass of bourbon and the last light of the sun painting Sarah's roses gold. The settlement folder lay closed on the small table beside me. I opened it one final time, flipped to the last page, and looked at the judge's signature. Then I closed it and set it aside for good. Sarah, I said quietly, voice steady for the first time in years. They tried to take the house, the money, the reputation, even my mind on paper. They used our grandson like a pawn. They called me a relic on national television. But none of it stuck. Because the only thing they could never touch was the part of me that still knows how to teach a kid to strike a ball clean and look another man in the eye when the final whistle blows. The wind moved through the garden. The roses nodded, petals brushing the air like quiet applause. I raised the glass. I set the load down, love. Every last dollar, every last demand, every last illusion that love could be bought. And what's left is mine, the field, the kids, the peace. And the man who finally learned that saying no is sometimes the most loving thing a father can do. I took a slow sip and let the bourbon warm the place where the old weight used to sit. The next morning I woke before dawn, drove to the field while the grass was still wet with dew, and set up cones for the first drill of the day. No headlines, no court dates, no voicemails from desperate children pretending to be adults. Just the sound of my own cleats on the turf and the knowledge that every check I wrote from now on carried my name, my values, and my boundaries. Tyler and Brooke kept making the payments. The academy limped forward under new rules. The grandkids grew up in a smaller house with smaller expectations. I never saw them again during those 8 years, but I heard through mutual friends that the boy had made a local travel team and still wore the old academy colors under his new jersey. That was enough. Some nights, when the house is especially quiet, I still pull out the old match footage from my playing days. I watch the younger version of myself flying down the wing, chasing every ball like it was the last one on earth. Then I look at the man in the mirror now, 42 years old, hair more silver than black, knees that ache when it rains, and I smile. Because the man on the screen was chasing glory. The man in the mirror finally learned to chase freedom. And freedom, it turns out, tastes better than any roar from 42,000 fans. It tastes like fresh-cut grass at 6 a.m., like the clean crack of a perfectly struck ball, like the quiet nod of roses in the evening wind, and like the steady heartbeat of a life that no one else gets to spend. I was never a walking ATM. I was never a sentimental relic. I was a father who finally drew the line, protected what remained, and stepped onto a new pitch where the only score that mattered was the one I kept for myself. And for the first time in 8 long years, when the final whistle blows inside my own chest, I can look up at the lights and know the game was mine from start to finish. The final restitution check cleared on a cold January morning, exactly 14 months after Brooke had grabbed the microphone on the pitch and declared me obsolete. I sat at the kitchen island with my laptop open, watching the bank notification pop up. $1,960,000 deposited into the Youth Development Trust. No note, no apology, just the money. The last of the $2.8 million they had diverted clawed back through liens, forced asset sales, and the cold machinery of the court. I closed the laptop, poured a fresh cup of coffee, and walked out to Sarah's garden. The roses were dormant under a thin layer of frost, but I could already see the tight buds waiting for spring. I touched one bare cane and spoke the words I had been holding since the night everything exploded. It's finished, love. Every dollar they took without earning is back where it belongs. Not with me, with kids who will actually learn what it means to fight for something instead of waiting for it to be handed over. The wind moved through the empty branches. The garden listened. I drove to the field early. The ground was hard, the grass silver with frost, but 23 kids showed up anyway, breath fogging in the cold air. Little Rocket, now 13 and taller than I remembered, ran up with a brand new ball under his arm. "Coach Jack, the trust just paid for new goals and nets. The whole program." My dad saw the email. He said it came from somewhere good. I bounced the ball once, feeling the familiar weight. It did. Now let's see if you can put it in the back of the net before the sun comes up. We trained hard that morning. No complaints about the cold, no excuses. Just sweat, laughter, and the clean sound of leather meeting leather. When practice ended, I gathered them in a circle the way I used to do with my own academy players years ago. "Listen up," I said, voice low but clear. "Money can buy balls and goals and fields, but it can't buy heart. It can't buy respect, and it damn sure can't buy the right to treat people like ATMs. You remember that. Earn what you get, respect what you have, and never let anyone make you feel small for saying no when something isn't right." They nodded, serious for once. Little Rocket bumped my fist on the way out. "Thanks, Coach, for everything." I watched them leave, then locked the equipment shed and headed home. The house felt different now. Lighter. The study no longer held thick folders of wire transfers and legal filings. I had burned the last of the old bank statements in the fireplace 2 nights earlier, watching 7 years of numbers curl into ash. What remained was simple. One framed photo of Sarah in the garden, my old cleats on the shelf, and the drawing from the boy that still hung on the wall. That afternoon, Marcus called for the last time on this matter. "Jack, the court has issued the final satisfaction of judgment. Liens released, criminal referral closed, the permanent restraining order stands. They can't come near you, the program, or any public mention of your name without risking jail. It's over." I leaned back in the chair Sarah had picked out years ago. "Thank you, Marcus, for everything." He was quiet a moment. "You did the hard thing. Most people never do. Most people never have to watch their own son try to have them declared senile so he can keep spending their retirement," I answered. "I just refuse to keep paying for the lesson." We hung up. I sat there until the light changed, then did something I hadn't done in months. I opened the old match footage on my laptop and watched the final goal I ever scored as a professional. The stadium roar filled the room for 30 seconds. Then I closed the file and turned off the screen. That roar belonged to the past. The quiet I had now belonged to me. Spring came early that year. The roses exploded into color, red and white and soft pink, exactly the way Sarah had planned. I spent weekends pruning, watering, and talking to her the way I always had. One Saturday evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the garden gold, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "Grandpa Jack?" A young man's voice, deeper now. "It's me, your grandson. I turned 18 last week. The judge said I could reach out if I wanted. I wanted to." I sat down on the stone bench Sarah had loved. "Hello, son." We talked for 20 minutes. Awkward at first, then easier. He told me about making the varsity team at his high school, about the scholarship offer starting to come in, about how he still wore the old academy colors under his jersey sometimes. He didn't ask for money. He didn't make excuses for his parents. He just said, "I saw the stories online when I got older. I'm sorry for what they did. I wanted you to know I never believed the bad things they said about you." I listened, chest tight but steady. "You don't owe me an apology. You were a kid. They were the adults. I'm proud you reached out. And I'm proud you're playing. Keep earning it." He was quiet. "Can I maybe come watch you coach sometime? No pressure, just to see." I looked at the roses, at the drawing still hanging inside, at the life I had rebuilt one boundary at a time. "When you're ready, the field is open. But understand the rules stay the same. No messages from your parents, no requests for money, just soccer and honesty. If you can live with that, you're welcome." "I can," he said quickly. "Thank you, Grandpa." We ended the call without promises. That was enough. A week later, he showed up at the field on a Saturday morning. Tall now, broad-shouldered, with Tyler's eyes but none of the entitlement. He stood on the sideline and watched us train. When practice ended, he helped put away the cones without being asked. Little Rocket recognized him and gave him a fist bump like they'd known each other for years. I walked over. "Good to see you." He nodded, looking at the grass. "It feels different here. Cleaner somehow." "It is," I said. "No one's keeping score except the kids and the ball." He stayed for another hour, kicking around with the younger ones. When he left, he shook my hand like a man. "I'll come back if that's okay." "It's okay," I told him, "as long as you remember the rules." He smiled, small and real. I remember. Tyler and Brooke never contacted me again. The restitution finished on schedule. The academy survived, smaller and stricter, under new leadership that actually balanced the books. I heard through distant mutual friends that they were living quieter lives, working regular jobs, learning the taste of money they had to earn themselves. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. My life settled into a rhythm that felt like breathing again. Mornings on the field, afternoons tending the garden, evenings with a single glass of bourbon and the quiet company of memories that no longer hurt. The inner-city program grew to 4 fields and nearly 100 kids. We started a scholarship fund for college-bound players. I coached, mentored, and watched boys become young men who understood the difference between being given everything and earning something real. Some nights I still pull out Sarah's last journal and read that single line. Tell Jack he doesn't have to keep carrying everyone. Sometimes the strongest thing a man can do is set the load down. I set it down, every last ounce. And what rose up in its place was something I never knew I was missing. A life that belonged only to me. The man who once wired millions to buy affection now wired nothing but time, knowledge, and quiet boundaries to kids who actually listened. The father who had been called a relic on national television became the coach who taught a generation that respect can't be bought, only earned on the pitch and off it. I was never a walking ATM. I was never a sentimental relic. I was a man who finally drew the hardest line of his life, protected what remained of his dignity and his fortune, and stepped onto a new field where the only legacy that mattered was the one built with sweat, honesty, and the courage to say no. The roses still bloom every spring. The grandkids who choose to may visit when they're old enough to understand the rules. The ball still rolls clean across the grass every morning, and when the final whistle blows inside my own chest someday, I will look up at the lights and know the game was mine from the first kick to the last. No regrets. No more checks with anyone else's name on them. Just peace. Earned the hard way, and kept the only way that matters, by never letting anyone take it again. The last chapter didn't arrive with fanfare or a final court date. It arrived on an ordinary Tuesday evening in late April, the kind of soft Texas twilight where the air smells like cut grass and distant barbecue smoke. I was alone on the field after the kids had gone home, collecting the last cones under the fading light. My knees ached the way they always did after a long session, but it was a good ache, the kind that reminded me I was still moving, still useful. I bent to pick up the final orange disc when I heard footsteps on the grass behind me. I turned slowly. Tyler stood 20 yards away, hands in the pockets of an old academy jacket that no longer fit him the same way. No suit, no lawyer, no Brooke. Just my son, thinner now, older in the eyes, standing on the same turf I had paid for with years of my life. He didn't speak at first. Neither did I. The only sound was the distant traffic and the faint rustle of leaves in the trees beyond the fence. Finally, he cleared his throat. I saw the new scholarship announcement online. One of the kids from here got a full ride to Texas State. They mentioned your name in the article. Said you made it possible. I straightened, cone still in my hand. The kids made it possible. I just refused to let the money disappear anymore. He nodded once, looking at the ground. We got the final lien release last month. The house sold. We're renting an apartment now. Brooke's working full-time at the gym. I'm coaching part-time at a rec league. Nothing like before. I waited. Tyler lifted his eyes. They were red-rimmed. Not from tears exactly, but from the kind of tiredness that comes when you finally run out of excuses. I came to say I was wrong. About all of it. The wedding night speech, the conservatorship, the video with our son. Every time we treated you like the bank instead of the man who raised me after Mom died. I thought if we kept the money flowing, the family would stay together. Turns out we were the ones tearing it apart. I studied him for a long moment. The boy I had carried on my shoulders at his first soccer game. The man who had once stood 10 feet away on the pitch and refused to meet my eyes while his wife called me obsolete. You're not here for money, I said. It wasn't a question. No, his voice cracked. I'm not. We're done asking. I wanted you to know I finally understand what you were trying to teach me all those years. That respect isn't something you buy. It's something you earn by showing up when it's hard and standing on your own feet. I'm trying to do that now, for my kids, for myself. The cone felt heavy in my hand. I set it down. I'm not going to lie to you, Tyler. I don't trust you yet. I don't know if I ever will completely. You and Brooke tried to take everything I had left after your mother died. You tried to lock me away so you could keep spending. That kind of betrayal doesn't vanish because you finally ran out of other people's money. He flinched but didn't look away. I know.
I deserve that. But, I continued, voice steady, I also know what it feels like to carry a load that was never yours to begin with. I carried it for 7 years because I thought that's what love looked like. Turns out, love sometimes looks like steel boundaries and a locked gate. If you're serious about changing, then live it. Show up for your own family without expecting handouts. Teach your kids that the ball doesn't care how much money your grandfather once wired. It only cares how hard you work when no one's watching. Tyler swallowed hard. Can I ever come watch you coach again? Not for money, not for forgiveness. Just to see the man I should have been learning from all along. I looked past him to the empty field, the new goals shining under the security lights, the drawing from Little Rocket still taped inside the equipment shed. Then I looked back at my son. When your children are old enough to understand the rules without being used as messengers, and when you can stand on this sideline without asking for a single thing except the right to watch, then yes, the gate will be open. Until then, the boundaries stay exactly where they are. Steel. Unmoving. Mine. He nodded slowly, eyes shining. I understand. Thank you for even saying that much. He turned to leave, then stopped. Dad, I'm sorry. For all of it. I didn't answer right away. The words sat between us like the last ball on the pitch. I hear you, I said finally. Now go live like you mean it. That's the only apology that ever mattered. Tyler walked away across the grass. His shoulders were straighter than they had been in years. I watched until his truck lights disappeared down the road. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel rage. I felt something cleaner. Closure. That night I sat on the porch with the last glass of bourbon from the bottle I had opened the day the first restitution check arrived. The roses were in full bloom again, heavy and fragrant. I raised the glass toward the garden. Sarah, he came. Not for money, not for control, just to stand in the truth for once. I kept the boundaries. I kept the peace. And I kept the man you married, the one who finally stopped carrying everyone else's load. The wind moved through the flowers. The roses nodded, slow and deep, like they always did when the words were right. I slept without dreams and woke before dawn the way I liked. The field was waiting. The kids would be there soon. Little Rocket had a big game on Saturday and wanted extra finishing practice. My grandson had texted yesterday, a simple message. Varsity scored 2 goals last night. Thought you might want to know. No ask, no pressure. Just facts between men learning how to speak to each other again. I laced up my old cleats, the ones that still carried the memory of every pitch I had ever walked. The sun was just breaking the horizon when I stepped onto the grass. No more wire transfers. No more midnight calls begging for another bridge loan. No more lawyers or psychiatrists or forged emails. Just the ball, the field, the kids, and the quiet, steady heartbeat of a life I had taken back one hard no at a time. I was never a walking ATM. I was never a sentimental relic to be discarded when the money ran dry. I was Jack Callahan, 42 years old, former striker, father, grandfather, and coach. A man who had given millions trying to buy love, only to discover that the greatest legacy he could leave was the courage to stop paying for what should never have been for sale. The sun climbed higher. The first kids started arriving, laughing and calling my name. I tossed the ball to Little Rocket and blew the whistle. Again, I said, voice carrying across the dew-covered grass. Earn it. Every touch, every pass, every shot. That's how you build something that lasts. They listened. They worked. And for the first time in 8 long years, when I looked around the field I had helped create, I saw only the future. Clean, honest, and entirely mine to protect. The load was down. The boundaries were steel. The peace was real.
And the man who once stood on a roaring pitch while his own family called him obsolete, now stood on a quiet field surrounded by kids who called him coach, knowing that sometimes the loudest victory is the one no one else ever hears, the one you win for yourself.